Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live event. We are thrilled you're able to join us today. We are very excited to be having a conversation with Bob Deeds of Deeds Canine Connection about the parallel paths, building canine confidence and handler observation skills. Very exciting stuff. So, for those of you who may not know who I am, my name is Diana Santos. I'm the owner and lead instructor of Setwork University. And this whole event is all thanks to people who reached out, including Bob, saying, like, I want to talk about stuff. And I said, yes, let's talk about stuff. So, we are very delighted to have this conversation today. But we want you all to participate as well. So, we're streaming this on our Facebook page as well as our YouTube channel. They both appear to be working, which is very nice. So you guys absolutely can just write any questions that you happen to have inside those comments, and I'll share them on the screen so we're able to address those. But we're scheduled to be here for about an hour today. But I want to give Bob an opportunity. Sir, can you just give us a little bit of a background for yourself as far as your professional background and everything else?
Yeah, especially as it relates to detection. I've been doing detection training since the early 90s. Started actually in volunteer search and rescue. Is how I got involved in it. I became a handler with FEMA, with Texas Task Force 1 in 2000. My first deployment was with them was the World Trade Center after 9/11, and had right around 30 deployments in my career. In the early 2000s, I started training other detection venues, narcotics, explosives. You know, there were a lot of contract dogs that were going to Iraq and Afghanistan, and I did work for a company in Texas preparing those dogs. Also trained accelerant detection. My wife and I even worked with another company to train a peanut detection dog for a kid that would go into anaphylactic shock, you know, with peanut contact. And so that's kind of my background with that. Started to get toward the end of my career in 2016, and looked at the nose work thing. I had started a little activity sport thing called geoscenting, and it's where you scent geocaches, and then the dogs find the geocache. Pretty active in dog scouts, so they have a geocaching badge. And I remember when I took my dog out, it was my last live find dog with FEMA. I took her out. Well, I found a geocache, and I found it. And I'm like telling her, "Oh, you know, this is great." And she's looking at me going, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Where's little Timmy?" You know, she was completely bored with it. So I thought, you know what, let's let the dogs do the work. I think that's more cool. And this was about right around 2007-ish, something like that. And then, of course, got into, interested in the nose work thing, became a judge at the end of my career. It's something I wanted to do. I was an evaluator with FEMA, and I really enjoyed it. I'm a training geek, and being able to judge, I could still, watch people and learn. The judges learn more from you than you learn from them, I promise you. And so that's kind of where I am now. We had a kennel in Texas. We're in Tennessee now, but we had a kennel in Texas. Toward the end of our time there in Texas, we were training 30 to 35 dogs a month. Wow. On average, is what we had in training. So it's pretty busy times, and now we're just kind of calming down a little bit, and still training, but just not killing ourselves like we were there.
Good. I think that you've deserved that time to kind of bring it down a little bit, and also to celebrate your training geekiness.
Yes.
So you had reached out because you wanted to talk about a few things, and one of those is this whole interplay between building the canine confidence, but then also the handler skills. So right. The first thing I wanted to ask you was, when we're talking about nose work, why is it actually important for us to even build the dog's confidence, particularly when we're talking about the sport?
There's three different things that we look at when in the professional world when we get a dog to do a job. The first thing that we're going to look at is drive. Does the dog have have good food drive, good toy drive. The next thing we're going to look at is, does the dog have good nerve strength? Nerve strength is the dog's ability to remain, remain on task in a stressful environment, or to rebound quickly if it gets stressed. That would be, a dog with high nerve strength. The other thing is biddability. Does the dog want to work with you and stuff like that? If a dog lacks nerve strength, when it gets stressful, their drive becomes diminished. So you lose 2 out of 3 of those things. And then there's some other things that we cause as handlers. When that happens, it causes that third thing to diminish also. But ideally, in a perfect world, I'm going to have nerve strength here, drive here. So nerve strength will always diminish a little bit. Okay. Who's ever been nervous at a trial? And your dog's going to pick up on that. A lot of times I would go, the World Trade Center was still on fire while we were there.
Yeah.
There were times I'd go into a hole and I'd pour water in to see if it hit the metal down below and, boiled or steamed.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty high tech, but, it was a stressful environment. Go to trial. I always tell people at trial, breathe. Just breathe. You'll be fine. It's not that bad. You'll be fine. And that, when that diminishes that drive, that's a huge tool that you lose. And so that's why you want to have confidence. You want to have the confidence that actually kind of goes hand in hand with the nerve strength.
So with the confidence piece, when we're talking about the sports side of it,
Mm-hmm.
just because I know there are going to be people like, well, again, my dog is not, I'm not going to get deployed to a horrible catastrophe. I'm finding scented cotton swabs inside some classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when I'm talking about confidence in that regard, when my dog is maybe lower in their confidence, how is that actually going to manifest itself in a search, particularly at a trial? What are some of the things I may see?
Okay, let's take a dog that's reactive. A dog that's reactive, a lot of that is going to be fear-based. In fact, 99% of it, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's going to be fear-based. It's a confidence issue. You'll have a dog that maybe has a strong startle response environmentally. They walk in on a slippery floor. Okay, they got a floor that's slippery. They go into a room and maybe there's say something in the room that they've never seen before, and you have dogs that might wig out over that. So what you want is to create a dog that's going to be more resilient. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying that I can take a dog that's here and bring it up to here. I can take a dog that's here, here, and then bring it up to here, just not all the way up. But any improvement that we can make is going to make your life better when you go to trial. And that's something that we often don't think about. We go through drills, we do containers, we'll do interiors, we'll do autos, we'll do exteriors, and we'll set up stuff 2-dimensionally that we'll run our dog on, and then we go to trial. And it can take just one thing that's different that with some dogs will just blow them out of the water. And that's what we want to try to avoid. We want to create a situation where when the dog comes into the room and sees something different, instead of it taking them down, it actually gets them more excited and gets them to want to work more. I'll give you an example of something I learned about 20 years ago. Are you familiar with Kathy Sadeo?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Uh, Great gal. I went to a seminar she did about 20 years ago, and the title of that seminar was The Cue as the Reinforcer.
Mhm.
And cues can be verbal, they can be, but they can also be environmental. When you grab your leash, and your dog gets really excited, or you go to the back door, which maybe you do a lot of training out on the back porch, or in our case, we have a deck that we do a lot of training on. We go to that, well, then the arousal level starts to climb. The dog gets really excited because that's actually a cue that becomes reinforcing to go do more and more and more. And so what I want is I want to create a dog that when it finds something new and novel in the environment, or it even hears, say, a noise in the environment, and maybe it's a little bit noise reactive, that instead of it being detrimental, it actually makes the dog get more excited and want to do the job even more. That's what I
Mm.
want to create.
Perfect. And then for people who maybe hear that and go, "Oh, but I don't know what kind of dog I have." I don't know if they are doing that now or if they're going the other direction. So are there things that they can look for maybe in reviewing their trial videos where they'd be able to tell?
Well, trial videos and training videos. You need to video everything.
Mhm.
In fact, I've gotten bad lately about not doing it. I need to get my stuff back out. We took our camera to a dog scout camp, and I need to get it all set back up again. Because when it's set up, it's really easy to grab it and plug in the sound microphone and just do it. So bad, Bob. I've gotten bad about it, but um, used to video just everything. And if I have a really good training session, I don't always even watch it. If dogs are hitting my criteria and I'm moving in the direction that I want to move, and timing was good, and really didn't have any glitches, I don't really need to watch that. But if
Mm.
something squirrely happens in the middle of it, or if you have that one hide at the trial that you knew there was some interest there, but you couldn't get the dog over there, you know. Um, or if you tried to go in to support them, the opposite happened, and the dog squirted out the other direction.
Mm.
Those are things that you need to watch and figure out why. Let me tell you a word that if you'll learn this word, it'll change your life as far as your training is concerned. It's the
Okay.
word tendency,
Okay.
because that's all dog training is. That's all any animal training is. If you put that word in the front of your brain, if a dog is doing something that I don't want, I need to create a tendency for the dog to do something else that's incompatible with that behavior.
Mhm.
If I need the dog to do something that's going to require a good behavior or a new behavior, I have to create a new tendency.
Mhm.
Okay. The thing that's cool about that word is, what does it require of you? It requires you to observe first. You have to see what is the tendency. What we do as trainers, a lot of times, or as new trainers, what we do a lot of times is we know that we didn't achieve the goal, but we don't know what the tendency was that kept us from achieving the goal.
Mm.
So if you look at things in the lens or through the lens of tendency, it'll force you to cherry pick exactly what it is that you need to work on. We were talking before the start of the day about training chickens, and chickens have a tendency to peck this way. They peck because they want to overturn a rock or a stone to get the bug that's underneath. And if they peck like that when you're training them, like if you're doing discrimination, and they're pecking an object that's a certain shape, and you have three objects on the table, And every time they pick the object, even if they're getting the right one, they peck it backwards and it shoots off the table. That's a bad thing. Okay. So you need an up and down pecker, not a backward pecker. Okay. So it's very important to have the chicken peck right. So knowing that tendency is there, it's really going to fine tune the behavior of where that beak is coming, up and down versus this direction. So you've got to know what a chicken's tendency is. You know your own dog. You know what a tendency is. What are your dog's fears? What are the things that we need to work through in order to get the dog to understand that when that happens, it's no longer a bad thing. It's actually a good thing.
Perfect. And just to pull on that a little bit more, because I do see this a little bit, is that people are maybe not as in tune to what their dog is saying, where the dog may be concerned about things, particularly because the person is so focused on, we're here to perform at the trial and find the thing and get the cue.
Yes. And so
go ahead.
When you go back and watch the videos, I want you to look at for displacement behavior, for one thing, and displacement behavior may take that dog's nose down to the ground. Okay. It may also be scratching. The dog starts scratching. I don't know what was wrong. My dog doesn't have fleas and it's scratching a lot. Genital checking. That's one of the things. And that happens with both male and female dogs. That they'll start doing that. A lot of lip licking, a lot of yawning. We'll see that. You'll see a lot of checking in with you, constantly checking in with you. You'll see the dog sometimes glued to you, or you may see the dog all of a sudden work so far away you've never seen him work that far away. Part of it is the dog, is picking up on your vibe and going, Mom or Dad is really weird right now. I don't even want to be close to him. So you'll start to see things like that. One of the things that, and this is the advantage of filming your training, is to compare your training to the trial. Okay. You compare both of those and you'll say, wow, I have a tendency to do this here and in trial, and wow, my dog is doing that. She's starting to scratch, like her collar or her harness or whatever is bothering her. And so you'll be able to pick up on that. You'll start to see what you're doing that's irritating to your dog. And it's causing some problems. But you'll also be able to pick up environmentally. You'll look at a start or maybe a head turn. I've seen dogs in trial that hear a train, because there's a train track close to the elementary school where we're having the trial. And I literally saw a dog stop and turn its head for a solid 60 seconds.
Wow.
I mean, just froze.
Yeah.
Listening to that train, and the train went by and it went right back to work just like nothing. And the whole time the handler is talking to the dog and doing all this stuff. There's something called a MAP. It's a modal action pattern. It's hardwiring in the dog, and it basically, the signal will come into the brain. If it even hits the amygdala, it's a glancing blow, and it goes right to a part of the animal psyche that says react this way. Once a MAP has started, you're going to be hard pressed to interrupt it. It's almost got to, it has to finish. I mean, heavy compulsion, yeah, you could interrupt it, but it's going to come out on the backside and be a lot worse. That's why I don't espouse that, but that's one of the things that you have to consider. What is the tendency for that dog? What are some of the modal action patterns? What are some of the things that occur? The way that we combat that is we change some stuff on the front end. It may be in the way we set up, our run. What do you do at the start line? Things like that. Which may help with it also.
Perfect. Well, this is awesome already. So we're going to move on to our second little question here.
All right.
So, oh, go ahead.
No,
Um,
you're fine.
okay, perfect. So the thing I wanted to ask you was, people are inundated with information when it comes to training.
Hmm.
So even when we're talking about nose work, and they're like, okay, can you just tell me what is it that the most important thing for me to do? Is it to build confidence in the environment for the dog? Is it to get the dog to better trust their nose so they're not maybe second guessing themselves, letting the environment win? Or is it having me, the handler, know how to best support my dog? Or
Well,
is it
the
really all three?
the better trust their nose and the build confidence in the environment. It's all confidence. Better trust their nose is confidence. Do they have
Mhm.
confidence to trust their nose? Um, Knowing that you'll support them, but something you got to be careful of. And this came up recently. I saw somebody on a Facebook post write this. I lurk on a lot of different things and look, but they were spot on when they were talking about this. If you support your dog too much in training, meaning help your dog with the odor and stuff like that, it's going to be abysmal when you trial,
Mhm.
because you can't do that. For one thing, you don't know where it is in the trial. If and even working a blind hide, if you've worked a room enough, you kind of know where the hides are.
Right.
And yes, it's semi-blind, we'll call it. But you just can't help so much that becomes an expectation on the part of your dog. So the way you support your dog, and I'm going to say this in a general term and then I'll go into detail.
Sure.
The way you support your dog is don't be weird. All right, when you trial, and we can talk more about that in a little bit as far as what's weird, but don't be weird. And when you train, have clear and concise criteria. Train to that. And if it's not working, stop what you're doing. Don't keep pushing it.
Mhm.
That's we talked about that before we went live. People make this huge mistake of thinking I've always got to end on a good note. Always have to do that. Well, if your bad note was 15 repetitions before you got to your good note, there's something called matching law, and you've killed yourself. You've trained all of that bad stuff into the good stuff,
Mhm.
and so that creates a problem. But that's the way you support your dog, is good clean training, picking a start line pattern that's good to get the dog into the right frame of mind, whether you need to bring a dog up that has a lower arousal, or if you have a dog that is off the chart arousal wise, bringing them down. You know, having a good start line set up, to get your dog set up for success. Those are the things. Now let's talk about not being weird. Um, I remember getting rightfully chastised by an evaluator one time when I failed an evaluation. This was back, gosh, this was probably 2003, something like that. And I was up on the pile, and apparently I was raising my voice to my dog to where it was like in a higher register and everything, trying to get my dog to do something. And anyway, it didn't work. We failed the evaluation. And the handler or the evaluator, John Dean, great guy with Arizona Task Force, said, "Dude, you were a nutcase," and I was. So what happened, and this is where people make this huge mistake. they train, say, 5 or 6 different things, and they have item number 5 that they're really, really good at. And so their expectation when they go to trial is that they're going to rise to their highest level of training. It doesn't work like that. What you do is you exist at your lowest level of training. Okay. So if your dog is used to, and let's use that helping thing, where you're kind of, pushing them to the source, if they're used to that in training, and then you saw some interest in an area and you start maybe trying to kind of push them in that same area, but you don't know exactly where it is, so you're going to be doing something different. You're acting weird. You're just being weird. That's an example. If literally the color of your face changes to red, and I've seen this in trial, and it could be either embarrassment, or it could be that you're ticked at your dog, and that's happening. The dog picks up on that. They notice, that there's something different about your face. There's different things that are occurring. So we've got to train, and we have to set ourselves up so that the same things happen when we trial. We hear this still, train like you trial. And that is right to a degree. There's a lot of other good stuff that you can do to train that is nothing like a trial. But still, it's that same attitude. That's the stuff that you want. That's how you support your dog. But don't be weird. Here's the thing. This is the reality of it. And this is called training ethics. Okay, it has nothing to do with right and wrong and morals or anything like that. Training ethics states that the dog is responsible for one thing and one thing only, and that's behavior. Mm. We as the trainer are responsible for everything else. All right. And that's from the setup of the training. That's the way we act during training. All of that stuff. We're responsible for everything else. Everything else. And there's a lot of everythings. Okay. And going back to video, that's going to help you find what all those everythings are. Also, get other people to watch your videos. Mm-hmm. Seriously, get a training buddy and say, would you watch these 2 videos and tell me what am I doing that's different? It ain't the dog, it's you. Okay. What am I doing that's different? All right. And then utilize that, to also help you. Just don't be weird.
Perfect. So when people are trying to figure out an order of how to do these things, because there's only so much time in the day, people are very, very busy. What would you say when they're trying to organize their training, they should be focusing on more or first? Is there an order when we're trying to think about building the dog's confidence and also making sure that we're not being weird?
Well, okay. The thing is, building confidence, I do this still called puzzles, that I do. And I didn't invent these. A lot of other people did. But if I notice confidence issues right off the bat, I'm going to introduce puzzles really soon. I don't do, well, I say this. I have recommended to one of my clients that she did nothing but puzzles for about 2 weeks. And it was like incredible. It was the coolest thing in the world when we went out and actually started doing geoscenting, looking for scented caches. So it depends. It depends on the dog. But, I may introduce that really soon. Something that I'm very big on, and a lot of people don't, and I disagreed with it when I first started judging. And then when I started watching, I realized why and the benefit of it. But a trained final response. A lot of people don't do that. What they're looking for is body language. And, and they'll make calls, and sometimes it's a little bit gutsy, but they'll make a call on an alert, and it's not, it doesn't start out as a trained final response. But let me give you a little secret though. even if you're just using body language and you're reading body language, your dog will eventually get a trained final response. It's just going to happen because they've been reinforced for it. So guess what? You reinforce it enough, they're going to start doing it every time in that scenario. So you're going to train it whether that was your intention or not. Um, but um, but I like starting with kind of my my TFR at the beginning. If like in FEMA, our dogs had to bark, whether it was live find or human remains, because there was a lot of times the dog was completely out of sight when they would make the find. And you don't want the dog doing a refind, coming back and getting you and saying, little Timmy's over here, because it's dangerous. The more they run back and forth across the pile, they want the bark, then, you make provision to shore, go in and build stuff up.
Mhm.
So I start with that. Um, Started with it when I did explosives, when I did narcotics, accelerant detection, all of that. I would start with whatever I wanted my TFR to be. So I'm going to get a really good bark out of a dog if I'm doing a bark to begin with, before I even start to pair that with odor.
Mhm.
Want to caution you, and this is the way I train, but I'm going to caution you for a reason. I'm not going to put a sit on cue if I'm going to do the sit. What I want is I may even, use source odor and kind of lure the dog into that position so that the dog, I'm getting the benefit of them smelling the odor as they're luring it. And, uh, and then once I get to that point where even with a lure, and Karen Pryor is going to roll over on this, but even with a lure, I'll still mark when the rear end hits the ground, even with
Mhm.
that lure, until it gets to the point where I can place it, several feet away. The dog comes up and smells it, and the rear end hits the ground. Um, I'll do that if I'm doing that type of indication. I've had some really big dogs where I've elected to do a down instead of a sit,
Mhm.
because in a down position, their head sometimes is bigger than or taller than a dog that's sitting or
Right.
standing for that matter. So, it depends on the dog, but I'll do that TFR first if I'm going to do that. For those that aren't doing the TFR, the the stare, the solid stare, I'm still going to work on that, even if I'm not going to call it a TFR,
Right.
and do that. It all starts to develop over time anyway. Um, as far as imprinting odor, another thing that I want you to be cautious of, if your dog has a bunch of tendencies that may bite you on the rear later, I may hold off on introducing odor until I get rid of some of those tendencies.
Mhm.
Um, I was telling you about a dog earlier that I've got that I'm training for mold detection for a client, and this dog has a tendency to sit and back up as it's sitting. Bad thing, okay?
Right.
Because if source is here, I don't want my dog backing away from it. I want them coming closer to it when they sit. So I'm having to get rid of that backup thing first. It
Mhm.
also has a tendency to bark if there's any delay whatsoever, if it deems there's a delay. Like if it backs up and I don't want to click it, it'll start barking. And so I've got to be careful that I don't try to shape that as that bark comes out, because now I'm going
Mhm.
to get barking for the next 15 minutes. So God has a sense of humor. So,
Yeah.
but that's one of the things that we also need to consider. Um, if you have an extremely high drive dog, this stuff about back in the day, I remember them saying, never do obedience with a dog, before, you start to put odor on it and stuff like that. These high drive dogs, man, I would have been divorced a long time ago if I didn't get some obedience on these dogs a little bit. If you have a dog that is a little bit softer, go slow with it. A lot of people get into the sport and they've already got a lot of obedience on the dog.
Mhm.
So there you go. Forget what I just said. You could still do it anyway, but as far as what you start with, uh, if in a perfect world, I want to start with pairing my indication first. But again, it depends on if you're going to do the nose hold. Um, you can start with that nose hold and pairing that with odor. Um, that's a really good place to start. You just have to consider the dog. What kind
Mhm.
of baggage am I dealing with?
Right.
A lot, a
Perfect.
lot of different things. Yeah,
Yeah, no, basically it all depends. And
it
you will
all
have
depends.
to and you'll have to work on all of it at some point.
Don't you just hate that if you're listening to a webinar and they go,
Yeah.
"Well, it all depends."
Yes, exactly.
Just anyway. So
It's like, "Oh, thank you so much."
yeah, yeah,
You could have just said that in the beginning. Just could have said that on the sales page.
yeah.
So you have touched upon this a little bit, but I want to make certain that people are really clear as far as what are some of the things that they may be doing, whether in training or at trial, that could be dampening or lessening their dog's confidence that they should be aware of.
Um, Another example I'm going to give you, and this comes from USAR, but you'll see really quickly how this applies. Um, when I became an evaluator, first of all, let me back up. Early in my career, um, we were still learning how to evaluate dogs across the system. So you would see a variety of levels of dogs, some that maybe didn't have the nerve strength to do the job. You'd see a lot of washouts, stuff like that. By the time, and I'm going to use Texas as an example, we use the Brownell Marseille Conorohu um, assessment, which was really a cool way to assess both nerve strength and drive. And we went for a 9-year period without a dog um, failing an evaluation, a dog or a handler.
Wow.
We had such good dogs. So, we were doing the right thing there. But what I saw when teams started to get really good dogs is, again, they were weird. Handlers were weird. They would train. There's something called directionals, and think of a baseball field. You have a home plate, you have a pitcher's mound, you have first, third base, and you have second base out behind that. And it's 75 feet apart, and you need to be able to send your dogs to all those bases
Hmm.
as part of the evaluation for the first step before
Okay.
you do the advanced evaluation. People would train for that exact thing. They would train for it. And then once they passed that test, they never even thought about it again. And so a lot of times they would pass the basic test, and then they'd get to the advanced test, and they'd been doing nothing but search stuff. And one of the problems on the advanced test is you have to stay at the start. You can send your dog, but you can't go up on the pile. You have to be able to direct your dog.
Mm.
And this is what I told you the story about myself earlier, where my voice started to go up several octaves. I had done that very thing. I'd done really good on the directional stuff and passed that test. And now I started to train for the advanced test, and I'm pushing my dog or trying to push my dog, and there's no bases up there.
Right.
And I hadn't generalized it. And now my dog was, instead of going away from me, they were coming closer to me like, "Dad, what's wrong?
Hmm.
What's wrong?" Or just stop and staring at me like, "You're a nut, you're crazy. What's going on?" And so those are things, if we don't train right, then we act weird when we trial.
Hmm.
And so that's a huge thing. Another thing, and let's take the training part of it. It drives me nuts when I ask somebody, what's your plan for today? Well, I'm going to work on this. Okay, what's your plan? And well, I'm going to work on this. Okay, let's see what that looks like. And it's usually abysmal. I want to know, what is your criteria?
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what your percentage of success was in the session or sessions leading up to that. I want to know what you want to try to reach. And when you think about that, you're dealing with tendency. So now you're going into that and you're actually making a logical progression. If you don't do that, it's really hard on your dog.
Mm.
It's really hard on your dog. When I do puzzles, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but when I do puzzles, one of the aspects of a puzzle is you have to be able to change stuff on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
I already know what I'm going to change before I make the change. What I have to do is see how well the dog is doing. And I'm considering things like how much nerve strength the dog has coming into this. Um, I'm looking at things like how much nose time does the dog have? Stress diminishes drive. So am I going to dampen the hunt drive where the dog,
Mm.
stops looking? I've got to consider things like that. It's different than helping the dog find odor.
Right.
It's different because you're changing things within the environment, but the odors, you're not helping them find the odor. You may
Mm-hmm.
be helping them get to the odor, but not find it. So it's a little bit different, the aspect of that. But I see people all the time though that just don't plan, and it's very inefficient for one thing. The last two dogs I trained for FEMA, one was a human remains detection dog, and the other one was a live find dog. Typically, you're looking at, on average, probably now about a year. When I started, it was about a year and a half to get through certification. I trained both of those dogs through advanced certification in 4 months, start to finish. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because, for one thing, our task force had a very good checkoff sheet. I had clear criteria of what I wanted to accomplish when I trained, and I followed my training plan. I looked for tendencies, which I didn't even think about that word at the time, but that's really what I was doing. And I planned every session so that it would be better than my last session. And that's, when we don't do that, it can become very frustrating for the dog. It's just not fair to the dog.
Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, training logs, boo.
Here's the deal. I don't do so much training logs as I do checkoffs.
Mm.
Like, I'll write down some stuff that I want to do, and yeah, I did that, yeah, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's kind of what I learned from my task force. I don't care if you keep big logs. I mean, for this, for like scent work, nose work, I don't care. Checkoffs are really important though, because that's showing, did you reach criteria?
Right.
And if you didn't reach it, how far off were you? That's the stuff you need to keep track of.
Yes. Yes. You have to be thinking while you're doing this stuff, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to. I don't even now, well, with this, I do have a checkoff log book that I have for this mold detection dog, because I'm training it for a company. So it's kind of a legal thing where I want to have that so I can present all those records,
Mm-hmm.
when I present the dog. But like my dog, that I don't even know what I'm doing with her yet. Bless her heart. I do know what I'm doing as far as my criteria, what I'm trying to achieve, and then I'll decide later exactly what I want to do odor-wise. So for that part, I do have criteria set up. But with this dog, I mean, I have accurate records that I can show what I did in every training session, for the client dog. But you don't have to be that detailed. Just do a checkoff sheet. Do a checkoff sheet for that session. And until you reach fruition on whatever your target behavior is, keep the pages for that long. Although I will tell you, it's kind of sexy to go back a few years later and look at that stuff and see what you did. And I'm all about sexy dog training. Believe me, that's the cool part about training.
Perfect. So we do have an interesting question.
Mhm.
We're running into a lot of critters, feral cats under the floor, free-range cows, next to pheasant cages, next to goats. Can you suggest any puzzles to help build confidence? It's really hard to replicate.
Okay, this is actually this is a great question. Um, we've had my wife specializes in behavior. Okay, she's better looking and smarter than I am, and she has all these stuffy dogs and some other animals, dogs, cats, things like that. And we've had situations where we had dogs that were reactive. And when we got into upper levels of puzzles, we would actually introduce these stuffies into the search area. We
Mhm.
would we would put them out there. Had dogs that freaked out when they saw kids, and even being in an environment where they could smell kids. And how many trials have you done that were in a school? You know,
Mhm.
we see a lot of those, and and so we would have like toddler-sized dolls that we would put out and stuff like that, and the dogs literally learn to work around them. Uh, you know, you'll see a dog that'll kind of knock the stuffy out of the way to get to scent source. You don't do that in the very beginning,
Right.
but here's how. Remember, in the very beginning of this tonight, I talked about the cue as a reinforcer. As the dog is looking at different objects, like one of the things that I started to play with, and I, to be honest with you, I don't know exactly how they do it because I'm not a NACSW certified trainer, but I use boxes with odor on it and with some food in the box, and I'll put that out. But I'll have boxes all over the place. So
Mhm.
as the dog is coming out, each of those boxes cues the next box, which is reinforcing. It's like chain behavior.
Mhm.
And so you get that ball rolling. And remember what I talked about maps earlier, a modal action pattern. The way to attack a modal action pattern, which is when dogs are started to get into feral cats and goats and cows and aliens and whatever, when they start to get into that, the way to affect it is to affect it at the very beginning. So maybe your start line ritual, but walking in and seeing that first box,
Mhm.
walking in and seeing that first thing, arrest that modal action pattern right there. And so you take charge of that there, and then you'll start to see that all the rest of it dissipates. It'll start to dissipate over time. It may be that you have to do a ton of puzzles. It may be that you only have to do a few puzzles. But I put puzzles in, like with my own dog. I'll be doing, when I start doing a lot of puzzles, and I've already done some with her, but when I start doing it in the regular training program, because she's got some quirky stuff environmentally. Part of it is she's 7 months old. But I'll do a lot of puzzles, environmental puzzles, to get her more jazzed and more jacked up, you know, to go into the environment. And that's what you want, but you just want them jacked up over the right stuff.
Mhm. So can you just describe a little bit more for people what it is that you mean when you're setting up a puzzle? What does it look
Okay.
like?
First off, and I want to make this clear. I didn't invent these, but I don't know who did. I just know that after I started doing them, like I don't, are you familiar with Randy Hare? You know
Mhm.
Randy? Okay. I know I went to one of Randy's seminars, and this was, I don't know, 8 years after I, or 6 years after I'd started doing puzzles, and Randy did puzzles. I don't know where he got it, you know, and I doubt if he could tell me where he got it. But so they've been around forever. I just started calling them puzzles because one of my students said, let's do one of those puzzle things again. But when I first started doing those, when I first started like setting up puzzles, I would, it was basically because we had a very small training studio. It was only 1,200 square feet. And I wanted to make it just a little bit more exciting. So I thought, hey, how cool would it be to have them have to go up, climb some platforms up to a table to do it, to find odor. So I thought instead of doing just 2-dimensional, let's do, 3-dimensional. And then early on, I had a client with a corgi. The dog's name was Eli, and Eli um, would not bust brush. Man, he would get into odor, and it would be like in the back of my pasture, it was 100 yards away, and this dog, his head would turn, and he would take off at a dead run, and he would hit the tall grass, and the odor was maybe 5 feet into the tall grass, and he would just put on the brakes, and he would walk back and forth in front of that grass. He wouldn't bust brush. So what I did is I set up odor in that room, an area that in order to get to it, he had to go through some of these little small cones like you have for soccer, stuff like that. And I had those out, and he had to kind of push through them. Well, the first time he came up to them, he just went back and forth. And so I went over and I just removed a couple of them, and then he kind of weaved through them. And then I had him run a similar one, different spot, but again with the cones. And I left him in place. And the second time he got to him, and he just started knocking cones over. So we ran a couple of more like that. The following week, we went out, we worked the problem in the pasture again, and he took off running, and he goes through the brush like he'd been doing it all his life. And so that's how I would use that. Let's take a dog that has maybe say I know one of the trials I did, it was an exterior, and they had a hose that was coiled up, and one of the dogs stepped on that hose and it moved, and then they didn't want to have anything to do with it. So maybe I'll put a wobble board in front of an area. The first thing I'll do is I'll get the dog maybe exposed to a wobble board a little bit. And then I'll do a puzzle where a dog has to go over a wobble board. Let's take a dog that, and I'll use another exterior as an example. There's a drain grate, and the dog won't get on that grate, and maybe, it was hidden close to that, or they had to go across that to get to the area where it was hidden, and they won't go over that. Well, I may take like a box crate, a wire crate, fold it up, and put that in front of the hide where they have to walk across that crate to get to it. So I'm creating some similar things environmentally to try to help them generalize to what's actually happening in the environment. But that's the way I'd use it. There's some things that you have to consider. Any puzzle that you set up, you have to be able to adapt it on the fly. The last thing I want to do is I want to extinguish a dog's nose time because it was too stressful for them to complete something. And think of it as shaping in a way. I mean, you're shaping their emotional state to better handle something in the environment that's stressing them. And so that's kind of the way I'm looking at it, is that. So that's a huge component. I'll start out with everything kind of on the ground. Then I may add a degree of height, a slight change. Like the example I used earlier, I went from the floor up to a table. That's really too big a jump, but I did it early on. And then I thought, you know what, let's make some other levels. One of the things to consider, I've had dogs that have gone upstairs, again on an exterior. They went up some stairs to a door, and they turned around and they would not go back down the stairs again, and they timed out. And so I don't know why, and I've interviewed thousands of dogs, and none of them will tell me, but it's a lot harder going down than it is going up. I've got a little Shih Tzu that has zero training. She survives because she's extremely cute. And she'll come upstairs. In fact, I have a feeling she's outside the door of this room right now because I could hear something earlier. But when it's time to go down, she'll stop at the top of the stairs because she is really cute and she knows that I'll carry her down. Okay. But when I go down, I'll set something up maybe with some platforms where I can make the stairs, the steps 2 feet wide, so there's plenty of room. And then I'll slowly move those platforms closer together. So now the stairs you're looking at are only 6 inches wide, and I can adapt it that way so that they have to go down to get to something. I'll do some really advanced puzzles that I'll do. You'll get dogs that, and again, this actually will increase nose time. I'll set up a maze with X pins or barriers where the dog has to actually get out of odor to get back into odor, to get out of odor, to get back into odor to get there. I'll use those portable fans, the Ryobi fans with the battery. I'll set up intentional airflow to try to control and push the air one direction to actually facilitate the use of some of my puzzle challenges. Those are things that I do. But again, this is where what tendency does your dog have in a certain environmental challenge that you need to fix? That's a huge thing. And again, this is where you want to get other people to watch your videos. Don't just do it yourself. You would be amazed at the stuff that a second set of eyes will see.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing and a little embarrassing. But anyway, that's also a part of it. So I went to the doctor one time before I got a new hip. And when I walked in there, he said, "Where does it hurt?" And I showed him, and he said, "Pull your wallet out and put it on the other side." And he said, "Sit down." And did it still hurt? Yeah. I said, "Okay, we'll send you." I thought, wow, that's really technical. Now they're going to send me for an MRI. But he said, "You will not believe the number of people that I have them move the wallet to the other side, and I just made $150. It's great."
Yes, I can completely concede that. So one question I had for you, I just want to make sure that people are clear for the puzzles, is two-parter. Should they be, and I think that you touched upon this a little bit, should they be introducing their dogs to some of these concepts completely away from set work and nose work, like you were talking about the wobble board, if they've never seen a wobble board before?
Here's the deal. If it's something like a wobble board, yes. You're familiar with the veto game?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's a deal that dog scouts have a badge. It's called movement puzzles, and my wife didn't come up with this. It's a gal over in Sweden who actually came up with doing the veto game, but then putting obstacles out that the dog has to go over, under, through, across as it's going around the cones and stuff. It's really cool. But all of those elements are trained or exposed separately. Mm-hmm. So it depends on what it is. If it's something like a wobble board, I'm going to try to introduce that a little bit differently. And you guys know, you're not just going to have the wobble board move at the maximum height. You're going to put stuff underneath it to kind of just get a little bit of movement. So if the dog is really freaky deaky over surfaces, I may do that box crate thing, but I may start off with a couple of blankets on the top of it, so that it softens the feeling of the wire and the give and all that stuff. Right. And then slowly start to remove those and then put it into the puzzle. So yeah, you can do part of it separately. Sometimes if it's something that I can adapt easily, like removing cones, that's pretty easy, I'll probably start out just on the movement puzzle, putting that, or not the movement puzzle, but the puzzle, putting that in there. and letting the dog experience it, and then I can adapt it on the fly.
Okay. And then as far as when you are adapting it, is the dog still in the search area working the actual puzzle as you're making the change, or are you
Yeah,
putting them up, then making the change and bring them back?
no, they're usually there walking around because I want to have them be successful on the run. And I'll find out a little bit about that dog to begin with. The the group in Texas, there were like I had like 16 people in this class, and we all knew each other. We all went geoscenting together. We all um, trained together a lot. We hung out together. We all knew each other's dogs really well, and so that was easy peasy, as far as that. If I'm in a like a workshop situation, or I'm doing a webinar or something like that, I have to find out a little bit about the dogs first, so
Mhm.
I'll know recommendations. Um, but it's important though to know, so you'll know what to start with.
Perfect. Alrighty, we're moving on to our next little part here. So, for the handler piece, because the whole theme of this talk was kind of these parallel paths, we want to build up all the skills for the dog, but you
Hmm.
actually matter too, and you can make things really icky if you don't work on you.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
what are some of the ways that people would be able to work on their own skills, and how can they do that?
Okay, first off, if you don't have a dog, but you're interested in getting into sports and stuff like that, um, let's take scent work. You want to do scent work, volunteer for some trials. Even if you have a dog and you're already doing it and you're new to it, or even if you've been doing it for a while, volunteer. Go watch. If you're, in an early level, go watch some elite level. Be a timer. There's tons of stuff you can do. Um, Even being a steward and just helping move people around is great because you're learning how trials work. You're learning what happens behind the scenes. So you'll understand when they say do this, it's not going to be irritating. It's like, oh, okay, I know why they're having me do that. And watch trials. I cannot tell you how important that is. For one thing, it's cool for the people doing the trial because they get volunteers, but you're going to show so much better if you've got an idea of what's going to happen or what can possibly happen, when you go and you compete. That's a huge thing. Um, in a perfect world, um, I would wait a while before I got a dog. But if you've already got a dog, you want to be training and doing stuff with your dog. So best thing is to go work with people. Look with people that do not only the venue that you're in, but another venue. Say if you have an opportunity to train with somebody that does AKC and you do NACSW, train with that person that does AKC. Detection is detection is detection. There's some differences in trial, but the other stuff is the same. If you get an opportunity to look at some of the new stuff that's coming out, um, go look at some of the new stuff. But like UKC, AKC, and ACSW, those guys have been around for a while. Train with other people. Um, Watch videos. Watch some of the stuff on YouTube. But let me caution you also, just because somebody says something, don't change everything you're doing. Seriously, don't change everything you're doing. It may be a situation where the reason why what you're doing isn't working is because you're not good at what you're doing yet. Okay. Don't hesitate to ask somebody for help. If uh, I mentioned earlier about watching, getting other people to watch your videos. That's a huge thing. Um, uh, don't inundate me with videos. I'm not gonna be able to watch everybody. But I do, like with my students, I tell them, video your work during the week. I get to see you in class, but I want to know what's going on. So when you come to class, you'll be further along. I don't want to be at the same spot next week, or even gone, having gone the wrong direction even next week. I want to go a little bit further. So don't be afraid to get a training buddy. Um, that person doesn't even necessarily have to be better than you. They can be at the same level. Both of you watch other people and then share what you learned. Talk to people. That's huge. That's huge. Um, Look at some other things too. See if you can train another animal. If you have a cat, try to train your cat. Uh, use a clicker. See if you can train your cat. That's a huge thing. I've got something coming up later, doing a workshop where we're going to be using chickens to train trainers. And chickens move really fast. They will immediately expose what you're doing wrong. And it's a great way to learn, a phenomenal way to learn. But there's so much stuff out there that you can read. There's and be very careful too if you're reading about the science of stuff. Behaviorism in the human world doesn't work that great, because we have this thing called egos, and it really messes with it. Behaviorism works great with animals. It works phenomenally well with animals. And so read not so much the human psychology stuff, but read dog books about training. There's a lot of really good stuff out there. Really good stuff.
Perfect. Well, sir, you have been so incredibly generous with your time today. My goodness. Thank you so very much. Can you just talk a little bit more about what you're going to be doing with your chicken trainings? We have a link inside of the comments. I know that you said that you had maybe one more spot, so people could maybe take that up. But what are you guys going to be doing in there?
And if we had like a dozen of you say we want to do it, we'll open up a whole nother week. But this is going to be in Iowa, and it's a really cool place. Robin Grubel. For those of you in the scent world, you may be familiar with Robin. She does a lot of stuff, has a really good podcast. And Stacy Barnett, who a lot of you guys know, Robin and Stacy team up. They do a duet podcast that's really cool. But we're going to be doing this at Robin's, her ranch farm. It's about 800 acres. She has a really nice training facility. We're going to do it in the facility. The bunkhouse is where everybody will stay. It's going to be a non-dog event. Like I say, we're going to be training chickens. You're going to learn science, which is a huge thing. You got two choices with science. You can either use it or it will use you. And it's brutal when it uses you. It is brutal. It can completely screw your dog up, okay, if it's using you. It's using you, but it's taking it out on the dog. And so I learned more about training from working with Bob Bailey, going to his chicken workshops and training under him. I learned more about training than anything I have ever done in my life, training chickens. Very, very frustrating, but very, 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 very good at honing skills. You'll come away from it 100 times better trainer than you even thought you were.
Perfect. Yes, I definitely encourage you guys to check that out. Again, the more ways that we can elevate our skills as handlers for our poor dogs, the better it will be.
Yep.
Well, sir, I just want to thank you so very much for spending so much time with us today. You've been so generous with your time. Is there anything else that you wanted to let everyone know about before we start wrapping up today?
One little thing, I've mentioned start line several times. Something that I've noticed in general, judging trials are won or lost in about the first 25 seconds. Okay. Being able to assess the room is huge. That deal about what you need to learn. Odor scent propagation is a huge thing. We didn't really touched on that tonight, but that's one of those handler skills that you have got to learn. What does odor do in the environment, and what causes odor to do what it does in the environment? Those are the things. You've got that moment you walk in the door, you have a limited period of time, and this is what I've learned, and we can close on this. The handlers that are really, really good and very successful at what they do, I look at their eyes when they come in the room. They'll make eye contact with me for a fraction of a second, and then as I'm talking to them or they're talking to me, their eyes look like it's a pinball machine. They're looking, they're processing everything in that room, and I can almost tell you they're going to be a ribbon winner that day before I even see them run, just because of that. So learn that. That's a huge thing.
Awesome. Well,
Get
sir,
me back. I'll teach you that.
Perfect. Well, we really do appreciate all of your time and all of your expertise, sir. It was wonderful speaking with you tonight. But I hope that you have a wonderful weekend and have so much fun at chicken camp.
Great. Thank you very much. Good to
Thank
talk
you.
to you.
All right,
bye-bye now.
everyone. Have a good one, everyone. Make sure you give a cookie to your puppies for us. We look forward to